Thank you. Welcome, Heninger Park and Pacific Park residents. Thank you for joining us tonight and sharing your evening with us. This is the third meeting in a series of community meetings that we are holding through May. These meetings are being conducted to get your input and feedback about issues relating to the environment and quality of life in your neighborhoods and other neighborhoods throughout our city. Your participation tonight will assist staff in finalizing the general plan update that will be considered by the City Council later this year. We are joined tonight by Mayor Sarmiento, who will be sharing some information with us about the American Rescue Plan at the beginning of this meeting. And after his presentation, we will have about 10 minutes for our audience to provide feedback and talk about the American Rescue Plan. Before we begin our program tonight, I'd like to take a minute to introduce you to our staff who's assisting with this meeting and also assisting us with the interpretation as well. We have Melina Martinez. She's our principal planner and project planner. Margarita Macedonia, she is our senior planner. We have Alyssa Ventura. She's on the system right now, helping us with all of the back end facilitation of this meeting. Daisy Perez is here with us from the assistant. She's actually the assistant to the city manager. And then we have Ricardo Soto. So at this time, before we begin, I'd like to have Alyssa just to go over some housekeeping matter to let our audience know how they can participate in this meeting if they require interpretation. Alyssa?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So we do have Spanish and Vietnamese interpretation available. In order for you to access that, once the interpreters go over the instructions, you'll be able to see a little globe for the interpretation, and then you'll be able to select the language, either English, either Spanish or Vietnamese. And then also we'll have the presentation, a link for the presentations in the chat that will be also in Spanish and Vietnamese. Nilda, can you go ahead and translate this in Spanish, please?
Sí, buenas tardes. Vamos a tener disponible traducción al español y al vietnamita. Para poder acceder la traducción, tiene que hacer clic en el círculo que está aquí abajo en el idioma de su preferencia, ya sea español o vietnamita, y la presentación también estará en el idioma escogido. Gracias.
Thank you, Nilda. And Tu, can you go ahead as well and give the instructions in Vietnamese?
Dạ, kính thưa quý vị, tối hôm nay chúng tôi có cuộc nói chuyện về gọi là quân bình về cái cuộc sống, cái phẩm chất về cuộc sống với lại những cái vấn đề về môi trường, về phẩm chất và cuộc sống của quý vị trong môi trường với cộng đồng. Thì khi mà chúng tôi trình bày, chúng tôi có thông dịch viên người Tây Ban Nha và người Việt nói tiếng Việt và tiếng Tây Ban Nha. Quý vị có thể vào cái nghe thông dịch bằng tiếng Việt bằng cách là quý vị nhấn vào trong cái hình của cái quả địa cầu đó, rồi quý vị nhấn vào cái chỗ đề chữ Vietnamese, tức là tiếng Việt, thì là quý vị sẽ nghe được tiếng Việt của chúng tôi thông dịch. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, too.
Welcome.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, too, and Nilda. I'm always so impressed
You're
how
welcome.
accurate the translation is. So really appreciate your help tonight. At this time, I'd like to introduce our mayor, Mayor Sarmiento, to share his message. Mayor?
Great, thank you, Director Ty, and good evening to everybody in Heninger and Pacific Park. Thank you guys for letting me drop in on your meeting, and I know you have some really important things to discuss and listen to tonight regarding environmental justice and the impact it'll have on our general plan here in the city and the amendments that will go to that. I just wanted to briefly come in and I'm not sure, Director Ty, do we have any other council members on the call?
I don't see any council member here today with us.
Excellent. So if anybody jumps in, please let me know so I can make sure and introduce them and give them an opportunity to address our friends in both these neighborhood associations. So in any event, I'm going to be really brief. We only have 4 slides that I wanted to go through with you, everybody. And It's about the American Rescue Plan Act, which is a stimulus effort that was made possible by the federal government. It was about $130 billion that was extended to cities and local governments to address the consequences of the pandemic and how we can help navigate our way out of a lot of the difficult times that we've all had. So you'll see that what we're calling our portion of what we receive from the federal government is about $143 million with an M, not a B. And so we're really excited though, because it is a significant amount of stimulus that will help us address a lot of the needs that we know are existing in our community, but will continue to persist even after the pandemic starts receding. So we've called that, we call the Santa Ana portion of it Revive Santa Ana, which in Spanish means Revive Santa Ana, which is to kind of reignite things here. And so the three, we don't have any specific guidance from the federal government yet on how these monies will be, can be used and how they're going to be restricted. But broadly and at a high level, they did tell us that primarily it's to respond to the impacts of what the COVID-19 virus did to many of our residents and businesses. So we know we can use it for those. We can use it as well for government services, and how we were, how we as a city were impacted when we had to extend services as a result of the pandemic that we didn't expect to have to provide. And then there's a final category on infrastructure that has some express uses that we can use the money for. And as you can tell, all these have to be related and have a nexus to the COVID-19 pandemic. So whatever we do going forward, it has to have some relationship to that. So this tells you basically some of the categories that we're looking at, which is recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, meaning we're still going to need to do vaccinations. We're still going to need to expend on the infrastructure for delivery of those vaccinations, education, testing, all the other things that go towards making our community healthy and improving our indices of improvement, meaning reducing our positivity cases and reducing the incidence of COVID-related health impacts. We're also going to be looking at, obviously, programs having to do with rental assistance, because we know that that is going to be a big concern for people moving forward. There's been probably some arrears of rents that people have been accumulating over this period of time, as well as businesses that are going to be needing some relief as well. We also want to talk about how we can deliver public health to our community in a better way. We know that if one thing that we learned during this pandemic is that things could have been done much better. We see other communities that have their own public health agencies have been able to dictate and tailor the delivery of services and relief to their communities in a much better way when they're able to do it as a city rather than be part of a multi-city county. And here in Orange County, we have 34 cities that have to have needs addressed. And we know Santa Ana is one of the largest cities in the county with some very, very different needs than other cities have. And finally, the city's fiscal health, obviously, restoring service levels to where they were pre-pandemic, bringing back some of our employees who we had to furlough and let go, and basically getting ourselves healthy once again. So I'm really excited about all this because this, we worked really hard to get these monies here. There was a lot of advocacy to bring this level of funding to our city. So I'm here to basically ask you to let us know what you think are important priorities for us to address and to get your opinion, get your thoughts on efforts that we should be funding so we could relieve ourselves of this of this pandemic and recover quicker. So we do have a really great opportunity to make some significant changes on how government functions here in Santa Ana, how we can restore people's health, but how we can improve people's health moving forward, and how we can have programs in place that'll alleviate a lot of the damage that's been caused as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and restore a lot of what we used to deliver. But the way I see it is, since we're going to be restoring it, let's do it in a better way. So I think this is a transformational moment where we can start reinventing and relooking at how we deliver services to our residents and how our government here in Santa Ana can function. So I am extremely hopeful because these are the first steps to not only going back to some normalcy, but I think going beyond normalcy. So I want to, use the term, let's build back better, stronger, and more intelligently on how we do these things, because we're now going to be blessed with the opportunity to have some funding behind these efforts that we can change people's lives in here in the city. So I think the final slide that we have is how we can hear from you. So there are 3 ways, and there'll be a 4th way that I'll describe in a little bit, but we have a website here on the screen that you can contact us with your ideas. Let us know what you think is important to you and your neighborhood and your household. There's also a way for you to contact us through email, and you'll see the revive@santa-ana.org email where you can reach us and give us your thoughts. And you can also text us at the number that's there on the bottom of the screen, 714-805-8392. There will also be a survey that's going to be circulated, and it'll probably be posted on the website as well. We still have a little work to do because we want to have as broad a response as possible. We don't want to limit you to having to choose between certain things. We basically want to have an open-ended discussion with all of our residents. And one of the reasons I'm visiting you tonight is because I've been doing a series of these visits to other neighborhood association meetings, but also community groups, and just talking to them and all of us so we can make these decisions together. I know in the past when we've had stimulus money come to us for one thing or another, there's been very few opportunities to bring the public in and our residents in to help us make these decisions. So I think this is a really good opportunity for all of us to make these decisions collectively. And we want to hear from you as we make our deliberations at the City Council on the direction that we give for these funds. So Director Ty, I'm going to turn it back over to you and the staff there to see if there's anybody that maybe has a few comments that they can make relatively short, but we all obviously have these other channels that people can go ahead and express their thoughts and opinions with us on after the meeting, because I know it's a lot to digest, and sometimes people think about things afterwards and said, oh, this is a perfect idea. I think let me go ahead and mention this, but there are certainly ways. There is no, you don't have to get your question in right now. You can send it in after the meeting, or sometime later this week.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for sharing the information with us. So for our audience tonight, if you have any questions or any comments you would like to provide feedback to us and the mayor, please, you can do so now, but this won't be the only opportunity you can do this. You can also join us on our website or email us, and the information is up there. It's a great opportunity to be spending or be a part of spending $143 million. So please ask any questions or comments. I saw earlier that we do have someone. So Margarita, can you let our audience ask the questions?
Go ahead, Sarah Ramirez.
Hi, this is actually, that's my daughter's name, but this is Daniel
okay.
Ramirez.
Daniel. Oh, Daniel.
Yes. How are you? Yeah,
Welcome.
I'm Daniel Ramirez. I'm a teacher at Franklin Elementary School and also a member of a task force that we currently formed to target some of the concerns for our neighborhood and our school. And Mayor Sarmiento, something that I think we need to really tackle is the opportunity for our youth to have enrichment activities across the city, especially in the sports area. I know we have a lot of facilities in the city and maybe some joint use with the school district, and really just provide, because I've personally felt that with my own kids, not being able to participate in sports, and really I saw the effects of not having that. So maybe have something planned for our youth where they can not only develop their skills athletic, but also maybe in the arts, and really push that across the city.
Thank you. Excellent comment, excellent suggestion. I think that's something that I'm certainly in agreement with. I know that we have one of the youngest cities in the country. Our median age is right around 28, 29 years old, which means we have a very young population, and the population that you're talking about has been stuck inside for the past year, for the most part. And so what we want to do is we want to create opportunities, and I love that you said the arts, because a lot of times people just think athletics or sports are the only way people or young people can can devote their time. But there's arts, there's other different creative ways that we can have our kids be outside in open space. And we're working very closely, you should know, as a school teacher with your school district and your board members, because we want to work collaboratively with them to create opportunities that our city, may not have had. And I know I grew up here as a boy, and I, just remember that a lot of the school campuses were my parks, right? I would go play basketball on school parks. I'd go, toss the Frisbee or just hang out at school field spaces, because those were right around our neighborhood and they were never locked, and we were able to just go on campus and and have a good time. And those were our green spaces and open spaces. So I think we have a great opportunity. You have a great school board there. I think the council is real excited about working together. So great suggestion. And I think that, that's going to be one of our priorities, to make sure that we address the needs of our youth.
Margarita, do we have anyone else raising their hands or have any questions in our chat?
We do not, Min.
Thank you. Mayor, thank you so much for being here with us. Again, for the audience, this is a great opportunity to voice your comment. We do have the contact information for taking in comments via website or email, and also text us at the phone number below. So thank you so much. At this point in time, Mayor, I'd like to begin our program for tonight. I'll be introducing Melina Martinez, our project manager. She is a principal planner, but she is managing the general plan update. Melanie.
Great, thank you, Min, and welcome everyone. We appreciate you taking the time tonight to be with us and talk about this important subject. We'll take just another quick pause so Alyssa can walk us through the ways, reaffirm the ways to participate throughout the night.
Yeah.
Alyssa?
Hi, everyone. So there are a couple of ways for you to participate in tonight's meeting. We obviously want to hear from you and get feedback from you. So if you would like to make a statement or ask a question, raise your hand. So use the raise your hand feature. And then another way is to ask a question in the question box. So we will be reading through those throughout the night and pausing throughout the presentation to answer any questions. And then for those of you that are dialing in, I do see one phone call listener. Dial *9 to raise your hand if you have a question or comment to make. And then once we call on you, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. So tonight's meeting, we're going to cover a couple basic things. We're going to answer what is environmental justice. We're going to talk about the general plan briefly. We're going to clarify what constitutes an environmental justice neighborhood. What criteria do they need to fall into? And most importantly, we want to make sure that we leave time for listening and for the community to share their thoughts. Before we jump in, I'd like to ask Senior Planner Ricardo Soto to walk us through a real quick poll. Can you help us out there, Ricardo?
Sure. We're gonna have a couple of questions kind of dispersed throughout the presentation to break it up a bit. And the first question is just to get a sense of how familiar people are with the topics that are going to be discussed. So you should be seeing a window pop up with the first two questions. The first question, are you familiar with environmental justice issues in your community? You can answer yes or no. And then the second question, have you heard of the city's general plan update? And same, you can answer yes or no. And we'll give folks a little bit more time to be able to answer that. It looks like we have about 50% of the folks that have answered so far. Maybe a few more seconds and then we'll be closing it out. All right, Alyssa, do you want to close the poll? All right, so it looks like for number one, a little bit more than half answered yes. So you are familiar with some EJ issues in your community. And for question number two, 64%, which is a pretty good percentage, has heard about the city's general plan update. So that's pretty good.
Great, thank you, Ricardo. So, so some folks have maybe been involved along the last few years as we've been updating our general plan, but there's obviously opportunity for more to learn a little bit tonight. So with that, see if I can move on. There we go. So very broadly, in answering the question, what is environmental justice? It goes back to the notion that there are some communities or neighborhoods throughout California, throughout Santa Ana, that bear a larger burden of exposure to pollution and health risks. And the whole concept of environmental justice is to try and correct this inequity, to try and bring up those areas with disadvantage and increase the quality of life and the environmental health in those communities. As we mentioned, our general plan has been underway the last few years. It's a document that's supposed to set a course for us through 2045. It's a long-term planning document. And it's to not only guide the evolving physical development in our community, but the overall quality of life, the economic health, and the sustainability of our community over time. The words that you see at the bottom of the screen are the themes that came out when we did our earlier community outreach. And those themes were the values of culture, environmental sustainability, health, education, and equity. And as you can see, they complement actually the same intent of environmental justice with sustainability, health, and equity. The pictures that you see along the screen, those are the 11 elements that are now on our city website that have been drafted. And they cover a variety of topics from land use to circulation, to open space, to safety. And that's the opportunity we have, is that we are still refining these policies and actions that are in each of these topic areas. And so after we hear additionally from the community, like yourself tonight, we'll be refining those documents. So again, when the city updates the general plan, all cities in California, there's a new law that's called Planning for Healthy Communities that the state legislature enacted in 2016. It's also known as SB 1000. And it requires that cities, when they update their policies, that we really need to look at the disadvantaged areas, the disadvantaged communities, and we need to look to reducing the impacts of health risks in those areas. We want to promote community engagement, like tonight, and through surveys in the decision-making process, get everyone involved. And also, touching a little bit on what the mayor was speaking to as far as funding, also prioritize improvements in programs in these disadvantaged areas. So just to clarify, what is a disadvantaged area? Why is this, your neighborhood, considered a disadvantaged community? It's a combination of things, and those three that I'll touch on are that these areas have been identified as having a higher risk of exposure to pollution, be that air, water, or soil, and that the residents may be burdened even further with socioeconomic or some health issues, which we'll touch on in a minute. And in many cases, they are located near freeways, major roads, or near industrial areas. This slide shows what's called the indicators that help to define a disadvantaged community. There's something called the California Environ Screen, and it's a tool that the state has produced. And again, there's 20 different factors. The ones on the left relate to pollution burden. The ones that are on the right side here relate to population characteristics. So again, on the left, these areas have been identified to have greater exposure to some pollutants like ozone, diesel matter, toxic releases from different industrial facilities, or they might have environmental effects from solid waste facilities nearby or underground water that might have been contaminated. And then on the right, these areas have been identified that they have a little higher areas of sensitive population that may have more higher rates of asthma or low birth weight rates. And in addition, they might have some socioeconomic factors like a lower educational attainment level, higher poverty levels, and potentially unemployment that's higher as well. So these are the different factors that are taken into account when identifying a disadvantaged area. So with all the factors we just looked at, the model that is used evaluates all of that by census tract. So all of these small lines you see are census tracts throughout the area, and you can see the city of Santa Ana boundaries. So those census tracts that have a score or a burden level, if you will, higher than 75% are considered disadvantaged areas with special considerations. And those are the darker orange red areas. This image shows you clearly Santa Ana, zooming right in, and the bright pink areas are our disadvantaged communities. Those that are outlined in yellow are because the state is in the process of updating the model, and in doing so has adjusted the criteria, and additional census tracts in Santa Ana have been added. One exception is the area here that actually overlaps the Pacific Park neighborhood area, is actually one of the census tracts have dropped out of being an environmental justice area. And one of the other components that's been added in the new model is the identification of lead risk in Santa Ana and throughout California. So we're going to now pause in a second for just two other quick polls, but right here you see the two neighborhoods that are have been invited to join in the conversation tonight in particular. The one on the left, the yellow boundary is the neighborhood association boundary. You can see that for both Heninger and Pacific Park. And then as we mentioned earlier, the pink areas are the census tracts that are in the environmental justice areas. So for instance, Heninger Park, a little less than half is actually an environmental justice community, if you will. And then to the right for Pacific Park, a large portion that's in the pink is considered an environmental justice community. With that, Ricardo's going to ask a couple more questions for us.
Yeah, actually, we have two questions just to get a sense of how folks found out about the meeting tonight. That way, for future efforts related to EJ and just future efforts in general, we can get a better sense of what tools work. We can continue to focus more of our resources on those outreach tools to get people to join the meetings. So the question there is, how did you find out about tonight's meeting? And the answer is through a meeting flyer, a yard sign, you received an email, through a next door message, Facebook or Instagram message, a friend or a neighbor, announcement at your church or organization, through the city's website, or some other form. So a lot to choose from. So just let us know how you found out about tonight. Like I was saying, this is going to help us in future efforts to further put more resources towards those tools that work and help people participate in these meetings. So we'll give people a couple more seconds to get their answers in. Alyssa, do you want to close that one out? All right, so it looks like most people that are joining us here tonight found out about the meeting through a meeting flyer. So that's good to hear that was a successful tool to get folks to learn about the meeting, and then followed up by, it looks like 36% for an email, and a couple of ties there in the, was it 27% category for Facebook, Instagram, or neighbor or friend. Okay, for the next one there, Alyssa, can we jump to the next question? So just to get a sense of who's joining us, and if you reside within the two neighborhoods that we're going to be speaking about more in depth, and hopefully hear some comments from you. If you live in Heninger Park or Pacific Park, or if you live in another part of the town. So the question is, what neighborhood do you live in? And then the answer is Heninger Park, an EJ area in Heninger Park. So if you live within the boundary identified, like Melanie was mentioning, in that gold yellow color, but are in that magenta color area, that would be considered the EJ area. And that's north of Bishop, west of Birch, north of Pine. If you live in Pacific Park, so that would be on the map on the right within that gold boundary, an EJ area within Pacific Park. So currently, like 90% of Pacific Park is within an EJ area, except for that little small nub toward the west. It's bound by Bishop to the south, Pine at the north, and Cypress. And then in the newer version that's currently being worked on at the state level, draft 4.0, there's going to be a section that you see kind of hatched out there that is no longer going to be considered EJ. So, but for the time being, we'll just consider that part of the EJ area. So we'll just give folks a couple more seconds to put their answers in before we close this one out. All right, Alyssa, do you want to close this one? All right, so it looks like most of the people joining us here tonight are from another Santa Ana neighborhood, 50%, and then followed by the Heninger Park neighborhood with 25%. So thanks for like.
And Ricardo, it looks like some of the staff, they work in the area, they work with at Franklin School, so they're joining us.
Oh, okay, maybe that's the reason. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Ricardo, and thanks everyone for participating. I wanted to take a moment as well to thank the community leaders, the neighborhood leaders that helped get the word out about tonight's meeting, and the survey as well that's available. Those folks that helped put yard signs in your neighborhood, and help share the information with your neighbors. So we're very much appreciative of that, because it takes all of us working together to make things come together. And with that, just wanted to touch again on that we're here to discuss environmental justice tonight. And the opportunity is that the city's updating the general plan to revise its goals, policies, and actions to improve the existing and the future conditions for our community, with a focus on those areas, like our environmental justice areas of greatest need of help and protection. So with that, we'll do one more poll, and then we're going to open it up to your thoughts, and we'll sit back and listen. And with that, Ricardo, if you could take us through the next question. Thank you.
No, Ricardo, you're on mute.
Thanks for that. I was already like halfway through the explanation. Sorry about that. So this will be the last question for tonight. And what are your top 3 priorities that the city can focus on to help improve the health of your neighborhood? So that would be air or water pollution, roads, street lights, and other public facilities, access to healthy food, housing and affordable rent, parks and recreation centers to promote physical activity, ability to influence city policies and programs, or quality education. All right, so we have about half the folks that have been responding to the other questions that have responded so far, so we'll give people a little bit more time. right, Alyssa, do we want to close this one out? All right, so it looks like 69% of folks responded parks, recreation centers to promote physical activity, followed by roads, streetlights, and other public facilities. And let's see what the third option, it would be air and water pollution for the top 3 priorities for the city to focus on to help improve health of your neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to introduce Margarita Macedonia, and she'll walk us through the dialogue and the discussion. Margarita?
Yes, so I just wanted to give a shout out to the neighborhood leaders. Again, as Melanie, our team leader, has mentioned, want to acknowledge Janelle Hardy and Carla Juarez from the Heninger Park neighborhood. Want to acknowledge Daniel Ramirez, Erika Benavides from the Franklin school team, and I'm sure there are other parents who are on the call. And at Pacific Park, I want to acknowledge Sandra Pochapena and also Celica Diaz for helping to get the word out, and everyone else is joining. Thanks so much. And with that, this is the important part. This is the part where we want to hear from you. We want to listen to what the experience is for residents, people who work in the neighborhood, in terms of what are your priorities and concerns regarding environmental justice and what that means to you. So right now we have some priorities that we have laid out in our plan that speak to the air pollution, which connects to why that was a priority from this group. The improving public facilities, that's something we just heard also through the poll. Promoting healthy food, safe and sanitary housing, affordable housing was like another comment. And the physical activity and enhancing civic engagement. So we wanted to kickstart with that and wanted to invite people to participate, to share. And again, we are here to listen and we're here to learn from each other. So who would like to start? If we can, okay, Daniel Ramirez. Okay, hold on. Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
No, just in relation to the plans, is it going to be more like a strategy of prevention or intervention, like with this? I mean, because I know that there's some things maybe that are already in place with environmental impact that maybe are not going to get fixed, but so it's going to be more like a intervention or more like a prevention strategy.
It would be, this is Melanie McCann. As far as the general plan, it's looking at the future, and we're always looking at preventing things that are not to our community's benefit or health. And as far as intervention, we want to be part of the solution. So I would say it's both.
Okay, thank you. And just an idea. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because I know on Bristol, we have a lot of lots that are for sale right now, and if we are looking for open space, I mean, if there's any open space, I think right now, one clear open space is down Bristol Street with all the open space that we have there. And I noticed that the lots are going for sale. And so I'm not sure if that's something that maybe we can think of having that open space become, an area where people can, just go ahead and exercise and hang out. So that's just my idea.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
We're going to continue. We have some more hands raised. So the next one I have is Greg Cappfire. Go ahead, Greg.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Greg. I live in the Pacific Park area with my family, and I just wanted to bring up a couple of the main issues that I feel are really just at like a crisis level right now that I'm hoping are going to be directly addressed in this general plan. One thing, bouncing off what the previous gentleman said, is the open space. I read recently that Santa Ana, I believe 4% of the land here is considered green space, and that includes a cemetery and a private golf course. So I believe we're the second most park poor city in the United States. So that's got to change. I feel for our health, there needs to be more green space, whether it's using those empty lots that are along Bristol or anywhere in the city, expanding existing parks, creating new ones. You know, there's a lot of research about how people's health, especially post-COVID, is affected by their access to green space and shade. So I hope that there's a plan with concrete ways to move forward in increasing the green space that's in Santa Ana. That's my first point. The second one has to do with pollution, which is also really in a crisis level right now, particularly with lead in the soil in my neighborhood. I'd be happy to share a couple links in the chat after I speak with some resources about the levels of lead, which are way beyond state and federal acceptable levels. So there needs to be a remediation plan where people who are affected by this pollution, which really disproportionately affects children especially, but everyone, how they can get the soil in their homes and businesses remediated. And also with the air pollution as well. There's a lot of industrial companies along Maine and Bristol with no buffer zones between homes and schools. So the years of these companies releasing really toxic elements into the air and soil and water too have really created a crisis. So I'm hoping those issues will be directly addressed in the plan with a clear way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, we're gonna move to Leah Smith, and Leah has been typing in on the Q&A box. So go ahead, Leah.
Hi, I'd like to well, I asked in the chat about how certain parts are put outside of the EJ zone, but just to follow up on what Greg was saying, I think I really hope that in the plan there will be substantial increase in the amount of green space that is being dedicated, so that, especially related to trees, I'm very concerned about making sure that trees that are mature in the city are maintained, and that we add more trees to the city itself. But I'm also very concerned about light pollution, which hasn't been mentioned as another pollution factor. And I know that the city has recently been putting street lights that are substantially brighter than the street lights that we used to have, which affects people's capacity to sleep. In my neighborhood, it's like having a mag light in my bedroom window all night. And I believe that has an effect on people's health. It has an effect on their sleep. And if we're thinking about people's health, I think we need to reconsider that particular kind of lighting in residential. Thank you.
We have another question in the chat, if I can read it in. Margarita?
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
The question is from Celica, and the question is, will the city share the data collected about pollution, air quality, and water and soil? How will the city help the residents? Will the city require extra permits for those companies who create higher label amounts of contaminants, or will the city require those companies to move their businesses out of the city?
This is Melanie. I can start with the beginning part of the question, and that is, will the city share information? We are actually in the process of putting some links on our website for a variety of information to share with the community as we are able to gather it. Things from the Orange County Water District regarding the South Basin Water Contamination Project, and the other government organizations that monitor and permit different industrial uses. So we definitely are working towards that. And it is one of the actions specified in the draft general plan. And then the second part of the question was, do you want to reframe that again, Ricardo?
Yeah, it was, will the city help the residents, or sorry, how will the city help the residents, and will the city require extra permits for those companies who create higher amounts of contaminants? Or will they force those companies to move the city?
So again, we're here to I'd be happy to answer these questions, but we're here to hear everyone's kind of thoughts and suggestions. The one of the other things that's in the draft actions for the general plan is to explore how to create buffers from the existing industrial uses and the residents and schools to create a safe, healthy distance. And there's also an action to look at incentivizing businesses to, number one, either transition to be more green and a healthy neighbor, or to find a way to not have those, let's call them unhealthful industrial uses in proximity to residential and sensitive uses like schools. So it is on the radar. It is actions that we'd like to bring to City Council for them to direct us on.
Yeah, and I think with the question that Celica asked, it really is difficult to track a lot of the environmental levels going to different websites. And I think, you know, with Melanie sharing that, yeah, the plan is to have a resource page, so you're not having to search all these different places to find information about pollution and environment. So thank you so much for the question, Celica. And Greg also shared the link regarding lead and just some other resources affecting neighborhoods and pollution.
Yeah, we're excited to take all those kinds of links and have them somewhere central and get it out to the community. Make it easier for everyone.
Okay, so do we have anyone else who would like to share? You can either raise your hand or let us know on the chat. Janelle or Carla? Would any of you like to share? Oh, here we go. Thanks, Janelle. So Janelle's asking if we can give some examples of how creating safe and sanitary housing works, or can that be implemented in EJ areas?
So safe and sanitary housing, let's all imagine where we all live, you know, now. So safe housing would be so that you've got, you know, plumbing, that everything works in your house, right? And sanitary where, you know, it's got all the basic functions and that it's maintained well. So, you know, there's some folks, you know, in Santa Ana that over time have been living in garages that are garages. You know, we now have accessory dwelling unit ordinances to convert those properly so that they, if they meet the standards, they can be safe and sanitary, true housing opportunities. So that would be one example.
Okay. We have Carla Juarez. Go ahead, Carla.
Thank you. I've had the privilege to speak with Melanie and Ricardo. So I think I have a bit more information than maybe others don't have. So I think if that information becomes available more to everybody, it would help everyone. And we actually only touched on one subject, which was the air pollution, but there's so many other subjects that have not been touched on that are still concerned. And what I'm looking forward on seeing are like solutions or recommendations from the city that are not extractive solutions, meaning that if it's a pollution that we think of regenerative waste, not like on if we have For example, like having a fan that throws in clean air, but we still have the factory that's producing the same toxic air. I would rather see a solution where we take the factory that's producing toxic air and have them form a regenerative way on producing the product without producing pollution, instead of having fans that would clean out the air, for example, very vague. Or as well, when we think about the overpopulation, there is an issue about parking here in our neighborhood. And who knows, maybe also the cars are the ones that produce the pollution. But there's an issue, and that also plays a part on overcrowding. And it's not that people want to live like that, it's because there is a bigger issue, that there isn't any livable wage that people can live by themselves. And also there isn't housing that is affordable to these folks to be able to afford and live in. And thinking of non-extractive solutions, all these funds that are going into getting the area cleaned up and getting the area kind of like like finding beautiful streets. I want to be sure that the city also takes a stand on not like kicking folks out. So the folks that are here that have been here could enjoy the new streets and the new lights and the new benches and the new parks. That there is a protection of tenants to not get kicked out by means of their rent being increased or just being kicked out for no apparent reason. Like, and those are just like some of the subjects that I want to keep on bringing to light, because I still see very much happening and affecting our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla.
Ricardo, if you have an opportunity, could you provide a link to the environmental justice webpage where the report is that gives additional details on the environmental justice model that we shared with Carla earlier today, so that
yeah, sure. I can drop a couple of different links into the chat, both to our EJ page that's on the city's city's general plan homepage, and then also to the state level Cal Environ Screen homepage. It also has a lot of different resources and data on that. So I'll be dropping that into the chat shortly.
Great. And thank you, Carla, for your comments.
We have a question from Celica from Pacific Park. Her question is, does the city have a list of companies that create higher levels of pollutions and or contaminants? But related to some of the earlier comments about where to find information.
Yeah, we don't have a list in hand. We have some raw data that we've gotten from the Air Quality Management District and from the Orange County Health, but we have not had the resources to do a lot with it. So we're at that stage where, like with the gentleman that shared the link about maybe the recent lead study with UCI, potentially, I'm not sure. But we're just kind of gathering all the resources out there. So to be specific, we don't have a list that we could hand over to you today that says, here's all the industrial locations that might be giving out some sorts of air toxics or have air quality management permits. But we're trying to do that. We're trying to make the time to do that.
And just to add to what Melanie is saying, this is a very critical component of what the proposed general plan is going to do. You know, with the feedback from the community, we heard loud and clear that, you know, we need to have some type of inventory or at least an assessment of the companies in our city that are licensed or required to have polluting emissions authorization from other agencies. And as part of the upcoming general plan, one of the policies is for the city, at least at the minimum, is to be a source for collecting of that information from the various agencies so that we can be that clearinghouse for information. So obviously you recognize this as being a very critical issue, and we heard that as well. And it is going to be a policy that we are looking to input into the new general plan. We have not done this before, and through the input of our last EJ process and what we are continuing to hear, it is going to be one of the recommended policy that we'll be looking at. So thank you for bringing that issue to light.
Okay, so we wanted to also use this opportunity to take additional questions or comments. Again, we are very interested in hearing about what the experience is in Heninger Park, in Pacific Park regarding environmental health and concerns. So thank you for those who have participated. For those who haven't, this would be a great opportunity to share from your perspective. You can raise your hand or you can enter on the Q&A box or on the chat.
I also want to share that, obviously there's a lot to think about, and also if you want to take some time to formulate your question and response, our staff is available by phone or via email, and we will put up the contact information. But also, as I mentioned earlier, we have a series of 10 meetings, even though that the meetings are focused in different neighborhoods. Obviously, anyone can attend, so you're welcome to attend those future meetings as well. Should you think of something that you didn't, that may not came up tonight. So our next couple meetings, we're still in the process of scheduling the rest of the meetings, but the next two meetings on April 27th is going to be focusing on the Lacey, Logan, and downtown area of the city. And then the following meeting on April 29th will be the Saddleback View and the Lyon neighborhood. While they're focusing in those neighborhoods, anyone, again, as I mentioned, is welcome to attend those. Margarita, if we don't have any other questions, do we have anything else?
We do. We have two of them. So one is from Janelle Hardy. Heninger Park neighborhood has no park, exposure to air pollution. No doubt it comes from traffic at First and Main Street intersection area. We also have buses coming into the EJ areas in the neighborhood that service a travel agency. These buses also have a negative impact on our neighborhood streets. Is there a regulation for these buses?
So we certainly do and can address issues. I want to say that it is also considered to be on a case-by-case basis, depending on the activities. Obviously, the private sector are very good at seeking loopholes. So Janelle, if you want, you can please give me a call and we can talk to our code enforcement division and evaluate the situation. The answer is yes. Yes, we have addressed these cases in the past. So we do have an ability to address these private charter bus company using our street as their basically pick up and drop off. So please give me a call. This is something that we don't necessarily have to make a part of the general plan discussion, but and we can help address through code enforcement. Thank you, Janelle.
And then Celica from Pacific Park elaborated about the list of all the polluting businesses. She's adding, because it seems like we're going in circles. If I can find out which companies are not following the law, the city can help our neighborhoods by getting those companies out of our neighborhoods. I have heard Jose Rea mention that many of those contaminants on the air cause asthma to residents who reside around where those companies are located.
And that comment is right on point, and I really appreciate it because that's exactly why we're making this a critical component of our EJ policy. As I mentioned, the city has not done that in the past. And many of the areas of regulations we don't have authority over, but having knowledge is powerful, and that's something that we want to make sure that we be a part of that clearinghouse of information. So thank you for that comment.
And then we have Daniel Ramirez just reinforcing Janelle's point earlier. Yes, Franklin supports the need for a park in our neighborhood.
Very good.
Let's see. So just one last time, if there are anybody who wants to share anything, especially who has not participated, we welcome that opportunity right now, or communicate through the chat or the Q&A box. And Janelle has commented, yes, identify companies that are polluters will save residents time and energy. Okay, I'm going to call on Erica
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I see Erica Benavides.
Yes, Erica, go ahead, Erica.
Hi, Margarita. Once again,
Hello.
Thank you for inviting Franklin. And Franklin, I know we have quite a few parents on here, so thank you for that. So just a question in regards to the general plan and the specific point of increasing physical activities. Is the city going to make sure that that's even a possibility within those communities who don't have any green space, including Heninger Park? So what is the likelihood of them making sure that this point, increasing physical activity is going to be equitable throughout the Santa Ana community, especially those who currently do not have any green space?
Well, let me start by saying that I imagine that in complement to the city's general plan update, our Parks and Recreation agency is also in the process of doing a citywide park master plan. So they will be looking extensively throughout the city and where there's deficiencies and where we can make pocket parks, where we can expand, any number of things. I would just offer in the short term, having safe pedestrian walkways to go on walks in neighborhoods. I know particularly during COVID, that's been a lot of folks' outlet just to get out of the house and walking. So I guess, we're definitely aware of the bigger picture challenge with open space. And I think in the short term, we need to look at all the little ways that we can at least promote activity, be it making connections to other parks within a reasonable distance for folks to get to, be it through transit, be it through safe bike access, be it through pedestrian access. So I think we all have to work together and find the short-term solutions, and then work hopefully with the parks master plan results and find the longer term solutions where we can somehow get more open space and recreation opportunities.
Awesome. And I know at one point there was actually a joint use agreement that the SAUSD and the city was working on to open up some of the green spaces that schools have. I'm not sure if that's a conversation that's continuing. But obviously every school has some green space, and perhaps that would be an option.
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. I know Parks and Recreation there are some existing agreements, and Parks and Recreation continues, I'm sure, to try and find opportunities. As you can appreciate, there's a little bit of resistance on those sorts of things, and we just have to keep talking through it to make those opportunities help serve the community.
And I think that when the mayor had mentioned about the school district and the council committee and the city council sort of reactivating that group, that might be more of an opportunity, like from a policymaker level.
Right.
So yeah.
Open up the conversation.
Thank you, Erika.
Thank you.
And there were some other comments about being able to focus on those companies, those higher polluting companies, and clarification that Heninger Park's built out already. There are no vacant lots in the Heninger Park neighborhood. And then Celica, can the city work with Santa Ana Unified, to allow the residents to use a green space? So yeah, we're touching on the same topics about opening those opportunities to increase access, especially if the neighborhood's been built out. Okay, so that's,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Margarita.
Okay, Min.
So it looks like we're also approaching our time for tonight. I just want to take a minute to thank you, everyone, for participating and giving us your input, both providing input back to the mayor about the American Recovery Rescue Plan, and then also talking about the general plan and the EJ issues. Your participation tonight will help the city and us and our decision makers to shape the policy for how we look into the future. And as one of our speakers talked about, we're not only looking at intervention, but we're also looking at prevention. So, your input will be very productive for us in updating and finalizing our general plan. Again, appreciate your participation and being with us this evening. This is not the only time you'll be able to provide input, as we have many different ways of giving input to our staff, both outside of the community meeting forum. We also will talk directly with you one-on-one, should you desire to speak to us one-on-one as well. So with that, if there are no final comments, I'll give another 30 seconds and then we can finalize this tonight's meeting.
Yes, I apologize, man. I was supposed to go back to Melanie to share some more examples of how we have some actions already.
Great, let's do that.
So I shared, the first one that I shared was these are two examples of actions in our general plan to share with the audience, the participants. And one is in our land use element, and it basically creates a requirement to develop specific plans in particular, in this case, along South Main, which is near both of the neighborhoods, to make sure that the design standards are there to preserve the character, the history, and the uniqueness of that area. So that's just one example. The next one is actually more relevant to environmental justice, and where we have environmental justice actions, we have this little symbol here. And this talks about, again, we're not doing this now, and it's a new program to establish an environmental quality team, if you will, interagency team, to monitor and make recommendations to better address our air quality and environmental hazards in the community. And then the last sentence here is to publish that information on the city's website through a dedicated environmental quality webpage of sorts. And that touches on what was talked about and brought up earlier, is to have information accessible. So that's specifically one of the action items that we would bring before City Council. And then I'll just segue, if I may, into the overall timeline for everyone's understanding. So we're continuing to do these outreach meetings and the surveys through May. And with the information that we get and the great feedback from tonight, we'll be using that to refine and adjust the draft general plan. So again, if you have any additional thoughts or any more specific suggestions, we encourage you to email them to us or contact us. And then in spring, later in spring, we'll be going back to Planning Commission to share that with them, the progress of the efforts. And then we will be revising the general planning AR in the summer. And then our goal is to go forward through public hearings with council consideration at the end of the year. So with that, hopefully all of you are aware of our survey. It's in Spanish, English, and Vietnamese. It's online. We encourage you to complete it. And if anyone needs a hard copy, we can certainly get that to you. And again, we have our website with a lot of information. our email, and our phone number. And again, we just really appreciate you taking the time, and we really appreciate your passion to and commitment to making Santa Ana a better place, the best it can be. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Melanie. Did you say that there's a chance to win $100?
Oh, well, yeah. So on the website, it also communicates that if you fill out the survey, you'll have a chance to win a $100 gift card. So there'll be essentially $100 gift card per neighborhood.
And just to add, Melanie, I dropped the link to the survey in the chat. So for those of you that are actively participating in the chat, there's a link straight to the survey there. Or if you want to go to the survey at a later time, you can just go to the website that's shown on the screen, and there's a few links on that page that are prominently displayed.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Melanie. And first of all, I want to again thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And then also I want to thank our staff for assisting with this meeting. I hope everyone have a great night and good health to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.